Throughout Sylvester Stallone's long career, he has been defined by two iconic movie characters, which are Rambo and Rocky. And they are two very different characters with two amazing franchises. So today I am going to stop and rank the Rambo movies and the Rocky movies in one video. Hey everybody, it's time for one of my favorite rankings of all time because I'm taking two of my third favorite movie character of all time, my favorite movie character of all time, some of my favorite movies of all time, and one really bad movie of all time, but also you get some really good action in the Rambo franchise and you get some really heartfelt moments in the Rocky movies. So without any more delay, let's get into my ranking of the Rocky movies and the Rambo movies, and I will say that I am including Creed 1 and 2 because Rocky is a crucial part of the story in that one. Creed 3 will not be included because Rocky is not in that movie. Sylvester Stallone, I believe, produced it or maybe directed it, but he was not an actual, Rocky is not an actual part of that movie. He's not even in the movie. But let's get started now. So easily in last place, I have Rocky 5. Do not go for it. Do not go for it. I do not like this movie at all. I mean, oof. I mean, I do think that there's a lot of problems here. I feel like I don't really think that Sylvester Stallone's son is a very good, like, he's not a very good casting choice as the actual son of Rocky. He doesn't really look like Rocky too much. Actually, I'll take that back. He does look kind of like him because he is Sylvester Stallone's real life son, but he doesn't really act like him. He can come off too whiny at some points. They make Rocky too unlikable and too stupid in this film, and coming off of Rocky 2, you would think he couldn't get any stupider. That's not a knock against Rocky because he's very lovable, and in that one he just couldn't read. But I can say that he does make some stupid decisions in this. The final act is so bad. One of the worst in this entire franchise, possibly. It's got to be the worst. To me, the characters are unlikable. Paulie, as usual, is at his worst probably in this one. He actually gets what's coming to him, where he actually gets a punch in the face. Some people might have been angry by that because it's from the bad guy. You, not me. I was happy about it because he is such a jerk in all these movies, but this one they dial it up to 11. I really don't like this film. It's stupid. They should have just ended with something like Rocky 4 or just gone straight to Rocky Balboa after that, because this is an utter dumpster fire. It wasn't needed, and boy, this film is a really difficult one to watch. At number 12, I have Rambo 3. Now, I've always been more of a hater of Rambo First Blood Part 2 than I am of Rambo 3. I don't think either of them are bad. I just think that of the Rambo movies, those are the two weak links. I'm now slightly leaning more towards First Blood Part 2 than 3 at the moment. I don't know why, but 3 feels kind of like a product of its time in the 80s, being a very big... It's very, very, very over the top and cheesy at times. It can be ultra serious at times. No one here seriously gets in 4 and 5, but pretty serious. But it kind of has some tonal shifts. It gets a bit. It does have some plot holes I think are not very well done. It has some problems that I wouldn't say are I would say it has some problems that are inevitable for a movie like this, and in certain degrees it has not aged well at all, although neither is First Blood Part 2. And the story is one of the worst in here. So I feel like they kind of just took the story of Rambo First Blood Part 2 and kind of just, they switched up a few things, so it's basically the same story of First Blood Part 2, just in a bit different. I still think it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely better than Rocky 5. Way better. But I would say that it's a product of its time and it's cheesy, but I do have a lot of fun with this movie. 11 is Rambo First Blood Part 2. And just like Rambo 3, it is a product of its time. It is cheesy. It is schlocky at times. It's very over the top, especially when this is a humongous tonal shift from this really big drama thriller action movie in First Blood, and then you get to this ultra cheesy big budget action blockbuster that is, they are so different from each other, which is part of the reason I would put it down lower. It feels way too much of a tonal shift. The story in here is nowhere near as good as it was in First Blood. And it says First Blood Part 2, but it has nothing. It don't. The only relevance it has to the original is that is that they talk about. I think they talk about a few times how what Rambo did in the first film. So that's the only relevance through this movie. It's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. I like it, but there's some moments I do think are a bit cheesy. It's hasn't aged well in a lot of ways, especially effects wise. A lot of the effects look very dated now, and it's fun, but there's just some flaws that I have with it. Bringing us into the top 10 is Rocky Balboa. This is a enormous step up from Rocky 5. In the sense, I actually like this movie, and at first, boy, for this one, I actually thought that Rocky Balboa was worse than Rocky 5. I don't know why. That might have been one of the dumbest things I have ever done, and believe me, I've done some dumb things when it comes to movie opinions, but that takes the cake because, Rocky Balboa, I feel like it's one of the ones that doesn't age, that has some problems with its tone. There's some stuff that's pretty over the top, like how Rocky, who's like in his like almost mids, he's like, well, I think he's in his 50s because he did John Rambo right after this, and Rambo was in his 50s, and that meaning he's around 50 years old, nearly 60 probably. So the fact that he can beat up a guy in his prime is pretty weird. I know they try to explain it like he's never fought someone that's actually serious about fighting, but seriously, he is way bigger than Rocky, and he can probably nail him easily. So he should have been able to at least give him at least a fight that was worth it. He didn't really give him much of a fight. He did land a few punches, but other than that, he's basically just staying away from him. So it just has some problems in that sort of sense. And I don't really think it was necessary to bring back the girl from the first movie. No one would have guessed it. I can tell you, nobody on this planet would have guessed that it is the girl from the original film. So I don't. I was like, they're bringing back her of all the people of the original film that we haven't seen throughout this franchise. They decided to bring back her. I mean, that's not really something I would have done. I liked her. She's a good character, but that's a kind of weird way to do it. I think the relationship between Rocky and his son is way better in this movie. So there's some really emotional moments, really good moments, and this is a film I thoroughly enjoy. It's just I do have some problems with it. Number 9 is Rocky 2. Of all the movies in this franchise of Rocky, this one feels the most like the original. Story wise, it's Rocky Balboa, but of just like the tone, if this one feels the most like it, and it feels kind of in some ways like a rehash of it, or just in some ways too much of the original again, only not as good as the original because I love the original. I do think this is a good movie because all the characters are likable. Rocky is a bit dumb. He's a bit dumbed down in this movie, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. He shouldn't have been dumbed down as much as he was. Like, you can make him dumb to a certain extent, but not that much. But I think it's a fun movie. It's a very very good movie compared to Rocky 5, which I'm gonna be ranting about probably in a lot more of this stuff. But I do think that a bit more of the things that dragged about this franchise are starting to show here. It's good. You can kind of see how Rocky is trying to learn how to be more smart in this. How he is trying his hardest to beat Apollo Creed, and in this one, Apollo Creed is absolutely going insane. Torturing his body, making sure that he is able to beat Rocky because he realizes after the first one, oh man, I messed with the wrong guy. So it's really funny seeing him now just going absolutely nuts trying to prepare himself for the fight of the century. So it is a really, really fun movie, but there's just some plot stuff that I'm not a very big fan of, but I do think it's a very, very fun movie. At number 8 is Rocky 3, a very over the top movie, just like Rambo 3 and Rambo 2. Meanwhile, this one knows it and uses it to its advantage, so it's fun. And believe me, this movie is very fun. This one was my personal second favorite of the franchise until I watched Creed. And believe me, I loved this movie. And when I say loved, I mean I loved it. It was so rewatchable for me. Probably more rewatchable than the original film. Doesn't mean I liked it more, but I would say it's probably the more rewatchable one for me of the first one and the third one. But it is fun. It uses it to its advantage. It has some really good characters. I did not like how they had to kill one of my favorite characters, which was Rocky's mentor. And then then you go into the fourth one where we get Apollo Creed dying. That is like one of the biggest 1-2 punches of deaths in 2 movies that I've ever seen. Because both of those characters mean so much to me in this franchise, and I love them. Rocky is, as usual, lovable in this, even though he has a bit more of an ego, so he's thinking that he's a lot cooler than he is. He's not going up against the most well-known opponents or the best opponents. He is he is at his most famous in this one easily, and there's some really fun stuff in this movie. It does kind of drag a bit at around like the second act, but it sort of makes up for it. But it is a really fun film. But I do really enjoy this one, and this is one I really recommend you try out because it is very fun. Now we're into Rocky 4, and the reason I would say Rocky 4 is better than Rocky 3, in my opinion, is because it took the cheese of Rocky 3, the over-the-topness, and fully embraced it. Meanwhile, Rocky 3 did have over-the-top, but it also had some serious moments. This one fully embraces the over-the-top moments. We get to see Rocky with a full-on beard. He goes to Russia to train when he goes up against Ivan Drago. Drago being one of the best of any of the villains in this franchise, and boy, this feels probably the most personal of the reasons for Rocky to go into a fight, because he's motivated because Drago kills Creed in the ring. So it's so personal, and the payoff is so fun. And there's some really good stuff in here. The reason I wouldn't put it higher on this list, and the reason I don't have it as high as as high as I wanted to in my ranking for the Rocky movies, is because of the poster. I know a lot of people are going to be like, what? The reason that I am not putting it higher is because the poster gives away the ending. So I do know it's a beautiful poster, but take a look and you see the ending where Rocky finally gets like the flag on him where he wins. It gives away the entire thing, because we all knew that he was probably going to be victorious, but we were like, oh great, so he is victorious, and so it loses the element of surprise with that. So it does spoil that, so that's why I wouldn't put it higher, but I do think this movie is extremely enjoyable. Now we're back at Rambo with Rambo Last Blood. I know a lot of people saw this movie and were like, nope. Simply because they either were squeamish with violence or because they just thought that there were too many plot holes. It doesn't feel like Rambo. It's too much like Taken. I don't care. This movie is great, and you need to look at it through a different lens. I get it. I can admit that of all the Rambo movies, this one feels the least like a Rambo movie. It feels more like Taken. But hey, I think that this movie on an enjoyment level is definitely better than First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3. Simply because I feel like Rambo himself is more of a character that you can root for in this one. Rambo is one of the few characters that the older he gets, the deadlier he gets, which is odd for most characters. The older they get, the less they get to the point to where they're almost not even much of a threat. Rambo is the complete opposite. He's a threat in the first one, so imagine dialing that in Last Blood. He is an absolute menace in this. This is like Home Alone for grown-ups. simply because at the end he's like setting traps, and he's going full on graphic mayhem with this. He is taking off people's limbs in this. He goes absolutely crazy, and what he does with the guy at the end, oh, whew, that was extremely graphic. I already knew about the scene, and had seen part of it through the preview because in the preview it does show him like starting to hold the knife off, and then he starts plunging it in, but they then cut away without showing anything too graphic because it's a trailer, so they can't do that much. So it's really really cool, and I feel like Rambo talks a lot more. I think Rambo might actually talk more in this one than he does in the other four combined, because he's now in a place where he's with a lot of people, so he now needs to talk more. But there are times that he does stay silent, like when he's with all those men in that outer in that like block. He's staying silent, and whenever someone's talking to Rambo and he's just staying silent, it's either because he's trying to annoy them or because he's like, nope, I don't want to talk right now. But he's a very silent person, and the only flaws I have with this film is the plot holes that kind of come out of nowhere that feel weird. I do think that Gabrielle's death. Oh, that is so heartbreaking, and the ending scene that gets the waterworks going every time. Of all the films in the Rambo franchise, I think John Rambo has the best ending, but of the ones that to the character, that send off the character, I think that just the way that they do it, I think Last One may have the better character send off because of how they have them end, and then they ended with the probably my favorite score of any movie ever, which is the Rambo score, playing as they just start backing up the lens of the house, and that just gets the waterworks going every time. But also the fact that Rambo does make a pretty stupid decision in this movie, which gets him really, really injured in this movie. We all know he is Rambo. He has one of the highest death counts in history of movies, but we all know that with that many guys, as much as I trust him, if he does not have a weapon, there's no way he's going to be able to beat all of them. So I do like this film. It's really enjoyable, but also one that is very hard to watch as well because of how dark it is, and because they do use the plot line of human trafficking, which that is not a plot line I usually want to see in a movie because of how dark it'll get, but it is a really fun movie, don't get me wrong. Bringing us into the top 5 is Creed 2. Now, this is a great sequel to an already great legacy sequel. So, this was a recipe for success because you had Sylvester Stallone coming back, and also Michael B. Jordan reprising his role. Those are my two favorite characters in this franchise, and also, if you know me, you know that I am a big fan of character arcs, and they give the Dragos in this movie, who were kind of just weird in the fourth one, they weren't as interesting and as depthful as they were. Then you get to Creed 2. They get a backstory to this, and it gives them such an amazing character arc and makes you actually feel emotional for them, and you're rooting for them. You don't want to be. You're rooting for them as well as Creed, which means that when you get to the final fight and Drago just calls down and says, no, we need to stop this now, and he forfeits knowing that Creed will beat his son, and he says, no, we need to stop this, and they give them such an amazing character arc, which just makes you feel so satisfied for these characters. Sylvester Stallone, as always, is amazing in this. How he's a lot more like on guard for this because it's Drago, because after all, Drago is the person that killed Apollo Creed, and which means that Adonis is immediately goes to accept the fight because he immediately wants to get revenge for what happened, even though Rocky did probably 20 years ago. It was way more than 20 years ago. It was like 40. So, actually, no, 30, but it was okay, I'll just say it's a long time ago, okay? Now, it's really, really, really fun. I know people who have this up higher than Creed, and if you like that, then that is completely your business, and believe me, if you like this more than the original Creed, then I'm not mad, because both of these films are outstanding. They make this makes Rocky 4 a better movie. It makes it a more satisfying movie, and I just feel like it's so well made, and it makes Stallone's character so much more fleshed out in this. It makes the Drago so much more likable in this. So I really love this movie, and there's a reason I had it so high on this list. And I debated whether this movie or the movie I'm about to talk about will be higher. I decided that there's some tonal shifts I think that I had to put on this film, so I would say that if I'm going for rewatchability, this is definitely higher because the film I'm about to talk about is not the most rewatchable. You'll find out why. But I'm going to say that I do really enjoy this film. Next up, John Rambo, or Rambo 4, whichever one you want to call it. I call it John Rambo because simply that's the definitive name for me. And if it was called Rambo, it feels more like the first film in a franchise, even though First Blood is. But anyway, we're going to... this is of all the movies on this list, this is one of the least rewatchable simply because this is a extremely hard film to watch. I rewatched part of it because I bought the Rambo films. Whew! I nearly had to turn this film off because of how like the opening scene they show how much they are not kidding around. The opening scene, I forgot how seriously dark and actually pretty violent it is. Right off, you have right off the bat in less than 5 minutes, you already have soldiers taking out. You have soldiers kidnapping people, then taking them to a like swamp area, putting mines in the water, and then having people run across them, which means that inevitably someone's going to run onto the mine, which will then blow them up. And boy, is that graphic when you see that. And I'm going to say that they do a really good job of making you hate these guys. When you see Rambo going full on Rambo on these people, you love it because of how amazingly written they make these awful characters. They are just doing it because they're bad people. You see them throwing kids into fire, killing them. You see them molesting women, raping women, putting heavy implications that a child is raped. They don't hold back. They fully go for it. And I mean, I really nearly turned this film off because I actually did turn it off for part of it because I was like, okay, nope, it is too late into the night, and I'm not watching a film this late at night because if it's this dark, I'm going to be not having a nightmare about it. And they do some really good stuff, like Rambo's ripping out people's throats in this. And the third act is full on carnage. And it's basically just an excuse for them to throw red paint at the camera or just blood. And it goes fully over the edge, and it's practically a horror film because of how dark it gets. And I also enjoy some of the character arcs, like the character arc of one of our churchmen who is very unrealistic, always being like, even though Rambo made it very clear that those pirates that were going to take the woman, they would have raped her. Then they would have cut off the heads of every single one of them. They would have been doing a lot of really bad stuff. And yet he says, no, you should not have killed them. There's never an excuse to take a life. So unrealistic. I'm a Christian, and even I know you should. There's points when you need to take someone's life to protect yourself. Like, I can tell you, I would definitely not have been angry if Rambo did that. Those were like some of the nicest of the bad people you saw in the movie, and that is a very high bar, because man, and you just see Rambo doing some really gruesome stuff in this. Like I said, the mind game that goes on, I think they do it like twice, maybe 3 times in this film. And of all the movies in this franchise, this one treats the character the best. And at the ending, this has my favorite of the endings in the franchise. Last Blood is close, but it feels so like we start by seeing him wandering in First Blood and just walking around. He doesn't know what to do. And now we see him walking to the farm. It's completely closed. He is finally home, and it feels so satisfying. So it is just so amazing. It's a really brutal film that I really have problems watching, because when you go from Rambo 3 to John Rambo, I mean, whew.
That escalated quickly.
And also, there's some really, really, really bad stuff in this film, like just the amount of blood they throw at the screen and the amount of stuff that they do with the women, like how much these bad guys are doing to them. They are awful people, and also the fact that like they did with the child, putting heavy implications that a child is raped. That's a bit too far for me. That is why it's not any higher as I could go. I wouldn't really high with this movie, but and also there's a really cool shot of just him, Rambo, just coming up behind the guy. I'll show the clip. And it is so cool when you see him then use the knife and chop off the guy, because you see that in the preview, and it's way more violent in the movie. Way more. There's a lot of blood coming out when he's decapitated, but I absolutely love this movie. It's a hard one to watch, but when I do watch it, I do really enjoy it. Bringing us into the top three is Creed. Just like how John Rambo treats the character the best in Rambo the best in that one, this one treats probably Rocky the best, and this is probably my favorite version of Rocky. He's a lot more clever. He is more of a father figure, and I'm more of a fan of this may be a hot take, but I think Rocky works better almost like as a mentor than he does as a main character. I love him as a main character, but when he's this mentor, he is so likable, and he's just so great. He's passing on the advice that he got a while ago from his mentor, so it just feels so satisfying that he's using it. He is so likable as usual. Adonis is always likable in this, and how he's trying to keep his name a secret because he was I'm trying to figure out how to say this and keep it PG. He was an accident. We'll say that. He was an accident. He was not meant to happen. He was a victim of I'll just say that he was an accident because I'm trying to keep this PG, but he was an accident, but he's a really nice character. He doesn't want the Creed name attached to him because he does not want to embarrass his father. And the way that Rocky looks at Creed when he finds out that he's Apollo's son, it's just so amazing. I remember how I watched this recently, and I absolutely loved it. I know people that actually say this is better than Rocky. I'm not fully there. I'm not that into it, but I do really enjoy this movie. It is really fun, and it's definitely the one that treats the character the best. So this is easily top three in my opinion. Our runner-up is Rocky. This is going to get me in a lot of trouble. But I really, really, really love this movie. This is a top 10 favorite movie of mine, and I absolutely love this film. It is one of those movies that I would argue is one of the perfect films. It is amazingly paced. All the characters are likable. Of Rambo and Rocky, with ease, Rocky is the more likable character simply because he's kind of written that way. He's more of the quiet guy that's not supposed to be very likable at times, and in the book he's not likable at all. I can tell you, he is awful in the book. But Rocky is an amazing character. He and Forrest Gump are like some of the nicest characters I can think of in movie history, and they are absolutely amazing as a couple of Adrian and Rocky, being just so amazing. Sylvester Stallone, he actually wasn't cast to be Rocky. He wrote the story for Rocky, and he was not going to sell it to the people that made Rocky unless he could be Rocky himself. And boy, was that an amazing casting choice. No one else can play Rocky like Sylvester Stallone. There's no other person who can play Rocky. No one. It's like Stallone's the only guy. I know people that say this is their favorite movie. I actually know someone that's going to be watching this that's going to say that. And props. That's an amazing choice because this is a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Amazing movie. With our question, it's easily a perfect movie. It is one of the great movies of all time. They do some amazing character studies with this, in that Rocky's not in this for the money. He's not in this for the fame. All he wants to do is how he's kind of like cheated his whole life, or just not done any chances, or he hasn't tried much in his life, so he's now taking a chance, and it doesn't matter that he wins or loses, it's that he tried, which makes it so satisfying at the ending when when he's calling Adrian's name. It is just so amazing. Rocky is always a lovable character, and you just get some truly satisfying moments in this film to where you absolutely love this movie. It is amazing. It's the better. It's if I was gonna say which is Sylvester Stallone's best movie, I would say Rocky is. But which one is my favorite is the movie we're about to come to. But this is easily a 10 out of 10 and one of my favorite movies of all time. But for me, coming into first place is The First Blood. The one of Stallone's best movies, in my opinion. Of the movies that are his best, this is probably his second best, but Rocky's the best of his movies. But which is one is my favorite. What best and favorite are two very different things. But this is my favorite of his movies. It's the movie that I think is probably the most rewatchable, where you get this Teasel who is. In the movie, he's more of this like a typical rednecked guy that's just being a typical bad guy. He's just being dumb. He's stupid, and he screws up big time. He messes with the wrong guy, and which leads to several deaths, several injuries, and him nearly getting killed himself. Meanwhile, in the book, he's of Rambo and Teasel. In the book, Teasel's actually the more likable guy because. There's some big differences. I'm going to talk about the differences right now because, like in the book, Rambo escapes the police station naked. Of course, they would have to take that out and give him clothes, which they do in the movie. Also, the guy that I find the most likable in this movie is the guy that was trying to tell the guy that would eventually get killed by Rambo. That was just beating him, abusing him. He's my favorite of the policemen, and I think in the book he actually gets gutted. In the book, when Rambo's escaping, he actually uses scissors and guts the guy. He slices open his chest. That is graphic, and he also permanently injures the guy by he uses something sharp and shoves it in his eye, which means that he permanently blinded. I think one of his eyes, maybe both. And he does some really bad stuff in the book. He is very unlikable in the book, and I think he's actually killed in the book. I have not finished the book yet, but I believe he is supposed to be killed in the book. Teasel, I know, is killed in the book. And Stallone knew when he should go for what the book did, and he also knew when to not go in the book route, which is a pretty good thing because if so, the movie would have gotten way worse than R rating, if you know what I mean, like NC-17 possibly. If that can actually get a rating for stuff like that. But believe me, I love this film. This is my third favorite film ever made. It's such a well-paced movie. The only things I would say are flawed that I would go with it is the fact that there is a line in the movie where Rambo does crack a joke saying, he says, don't look at me, don't look at me, look at the road. That's how accidents happen. And it didn't feel like he needed to crack a joke because that's not really Rambo. He doesn't crack jokes. He's the serious guy, which you see in these movies, especially 4 and 5. He's very serious. So it didn't really feel like that was necessary, but otherwise this film is so great, rewatchable, and it's such a character study how Rambo's a broken veteran and how he saw things that he needs out of his head. He needs attention. He needs to be like counseled or like therapy, and he's like this close to snapping, and then Teasel comes along and snaps, and he finally snaps at the point where after he's been abused, Teasel doesn't realize that he has bad people that are abusing him, and it leads to a very bad thing happening. And when Rambo just yells the line, "Nothing is over."
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!
Oh, that just gets me every time. And just the scene, the ending where he is going off to jail, I actually didn't think they were going to end there. I was surprised that they did that, so I immediately wanted to watch First Blood Part 2. I think I did like a week or two later. And wasn't as big a fan of it, but I did relatively enjoy it. But also, this movie is so amazing. It's also really important to my channel because when I watched this, when I had First Blood watched, I then reviewed it. My channel exploded. My views went skyrocketing, and Rambo First Blood Part 2 and 3, those reviews are my second and third most viewed videos ever, which is really, really cool. So that also might be why I'm pretty biased towards it, but I absolutely love this movie, so it is easily coming in at number 1 for me. Now, that is my ranking of all the Rambo and Rocky movies, guys. Please share your ranking if you've seen them in the comments below. Also, stay tuned because on the 29th, I know I changed it again. It's because I am such a klutz. I figured it out that apparently it was 29 movies the whole time. So 29 on the 29th. 29 on the 29th is what we're doing, I think. So that's what we're doing. We are doing a big ranking. So be sure to stay tuned. Film Kid will release his first as a premiere, and I should be there to talk to him as well. So you may get to talk to both of us if you want to. So, and then I'll premiere mine, and then the Pasta La Pizza and J. Lewis are TBD. I don't know who's gonna release theirs first. I think Pasta is, but they don't. I think Pasta is supposed to release his first, then Jay will go last. But that is the knowledge I have of it. Also, thank you all so much for watching this. Please like and subscribe if you're not already. Have a good one, guys, and as always,
hasta la vista, baby.
Thank you.